I think we've all questioned who Jesus is, whether he's a moral man or a good teacher or, something more than that. And today we're going to be learning about what Jesus said he was. There comes a point in this story where we finally have a face-to-face confrontation where Jesus is asked point blank who you are. Up until this point, there's been lots of miracles that have been taking place. Things that are kind of pointing to the fact that he is somebody special. No one has ever seen this type of thing taking place where the blind eyes have been opened and the lame are walking and the deaf are hearing and many other miracles, both great and small. And there's becoming a stir, and the crowds are forming, opinions are being made, and today Jesus is going to be asked point blank, who are you? So welcome back to Who in the World is Jesus? Today is episode 5, and we're going to hear from Jesus, who he says he is. There's been a lot of skepticism at this point. There's been a lot of guessing. He's alluded to the fact that he may be something more than just your average guy. But we're going to find out just a little more about that today. So if we can pick up in John chapter 10, verses 23. So Jesus was in the temple, walking through the section known as Solomon's Colonnade, and the people surrounded him and asked, "How long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." So Jesus is back in public again, and a crowd forms, and it says that the people surrounded him and asks, "How long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." Okay, I don't think that this was just your friendly gathering. I don't think that it was just a couple of kids coming out to play. This was Jesus being surrounded, and he's getting the point blank question, let us know who you are. Kind of like almost let us know who you are or else, okay? It was probably an intimidating scene. This is probably a really crude parallel, but almost like being in the, schoolyard and having everybody surround you and wanting to pick a fight. And you are kind of standing there helpless. And the intimidation is high, I would guess, and this is where we find ourselves in the story. So, Jesus replied, "I have already told you, and you don't believe me. The proof is the work I do in my Father's name, but you don't believe me." Jesus is trying to kind of skate this one a little bit, He's skating this one. He's kind of almost hurdling the fence, Isn't quite want to say what he really wants to say, but also knows that if he doesn't say what needs to be said, then there's going to be consequences. So I think there's going to be consequences anyways. Let's just be real. These people aren't very happy with him. So he says to them, he kind of gives an analogy. He's talking about the sheep that follow, okay? I know you've probably heard people called sheeple. And Jesus used a lot of sheep analogies in the Bible, and he says, but you don't believe me because you are not my sheep. My sheep listen to my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one can snatch them away from me, for my Father has given them to me, and he is more powerful than anyone else. No one can snatch them from the Father's hand. The Father and I are one. All right. So Jesus starts getting into this analogy about sheep and the Father, and saying that, who is this Father? Ultimately, he's talking about God the Father. Okay? As a rule, when Jesus talks about the Father is God. And he ends this paragraph by saying, the Father and I are one. And this is big, because he isn't just saying, I'm a good person, I'm a great teacher, I'm someone to emulate, someone to respect, someone whose teachings are worth following. He is literally putting himself at the level of God, right? And this is what the people have to say. And then they said, the people picked up stones to kill him. And Jesus said, at my Father's direction, I have done many good works. For which one are you going to stone me? They replied, we're stoning you not for any good work, but for blasphemy. You, a mere man, claim to be God. Jesus isn't making any distinctions at this point. He's making it really clear that he is more than just a mere man. To be honest, this is a part that most people stumble upon, that gives them the biggest hesitations about Jesus. But if we think about what he's done up until this point, if these stories are real, I know when I was a teenager, we used to joke that Jesus must have gotten all these stories, or the disciples must have made up all these stories around a campfire drinking, But if they're more than just a story, then who is Jesus really? They pick up their stones. They're ready to stone him. And he says, for which of the good deeds are you going to be stoning me for? Because he's almost been building the case up until this point. A case by case of healings. The healings were the evidences of, I'm not just your average guy. I mean, we said this before. We're talking about blind eyes opening. People that were literally brought to him on mats. Friends bringing their friend on a mat, and this person getting up and walking. Deaf people hearing. Countless of other stories. And this is becoming a big deal. This isn't just, a small ruckus going on. We're talking about the whole nation of Israel is forming opinions, and many of them are siding with Jesus. To be honest, it was the religious people that typically were the ones that weren't siding with him, and it was the common people, like me and you, that were the ones that were siding with him. He was our hero. He was our underdog. He was the one that was bringing hope. He had they said that he had the words of life. They said that when he spoke, the people listened. he had a commanding presence about him, and not the kind of commanding where I'm commanding myself, but it was more like a commanding out of love and humility. He came in a whole different way than anybody was expecting, and he is gathering a following, and it's becoming a freight train. Okay? This is no small matter at this point. Okay, this is next level. And they they aren't happy. They pick up the stones. They go to stone him. He asks those questions, and they haven't stoned him yet. Okay. He goes on to say, "Don't believe me unless I carry out my Father's work." Once again, he's calling God his Father. But if I do his work, believe in the evidence of the miracles that I have done. Even if you don't believe me, believe the miracles. Then you will know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. Once again, they tried to arrest him, but he got away and left them. Dang. So let's just hear that one more time. Okay? But if I do his work, believe in the evidence of the miraculous works I have done. And even if you don't believe me, then you will know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. He's compared himself to God again. And to be honest, who else but God could do something so miraculous? This was outstanding. And we were coming to a point in the story where people were having to decide. And he was making it really clear that I and the Father are one. Don't believe me, but believe the miracles that I do at least. And then he leaves. And the next story is kind of the pinnacle of all of his miracles. I'm not going to read the story because we'll be here for a long time. But his next miracle is he raises somebody from the dead. So it's almost like this build-up. He's done everything from small miracles, and then it's almost like each one, the train gets more momentum. And just in case anybody was still doubting who he was, he goes ahead and he raises somebody from the dead. The story goes that he was away in a different town. Some messengers were sent to him. They were told him that one of his good friends was sick. Come and help, because they knew that he was going to be able to take care of his sickness. And they leave, and Jesus waits almost 2 days before he decides to make a trek to go see his friend and take care of things. In that time, his friend dies. And he shows up, and he's been in the grave for 4 days, and they call him out. They open up the grave. Jesus yells, "Lazarus, come forth. Lazarus, come out, come out." And this guy that's been in the grave for 4 days comes out, and people are astonished. The frenzy is at the top. As if opening blind eyes wasn't enough. Now this dead man that everybody had seen is alive. And word is getting out even to farther reaches than anybody could have ever imagined. I didn't really want to concentrate too much on Lazarus because ultimately, the story is about Jesus and what happens next. And this is what happens after that resurrection. So many of the people who were with them believed in Jesus when they saw this happen, when they saw the raising of the dead. But naturally, right, some went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Because we know this has kind of been the story all along, that Jesus does something, someone goes and tells the Pharisees come out and give him a hard time. There's just been this harassment that's been going on more and more as the story has progressed. And we get to the point here that the leading priests and Pharisees call the high council. So these are like you got all the priests, but this is like the Pope and, going right to the top, not just the priests, not just the deacons and whatever else. They go into the Pope now, and they're going to have their council. And they called the council together and they said, "What are we going to do?" They asked each other. "This man certainly performs many miraculous signs. If we allow him to go on like this, soon everyone will believe in him. Then the Roman army will come and destroy both our temple and our nation." These guys are intimidated because they are the ruling party. And now Jesus is getting a lot of attention. People were speculating that he's the Messiah. Now he's just plain out come out and said it. People are believing it. In Jewish history, the Messiah was someone who was longed for and waited for. So he lined up. He lined up with who they were looking for, and they were pretty dang excited. But the religious leaders, not so much. So from that time on, the Jewish leaders began to plot Jesus' death. As a result, Jesus stopped his public ministry among the people and left Jerusalem. All right. So it's gotten so bad that they're plotting Jesus' death. And so much so that Jesus literally stopped his public ministry and kind of like almost went kind of underground at this point because they were looking for him. He was on the wanted list. If there were posters that could be hung up around town, his face would have been on them, right? Most wanted, right? So Jesus at this point stops his public ministry. He's probably doing things, under the radar with friends and different people that he meets. I mean, when you're a loving person, that doesn't just stop because of people chasing you. But he had to pull back because it just wasn't time. And at this point, the next time we see Jesus is going to be the last couple weeks of his life. He's going to make a guest appearance back in Jerusalem where all this mayhem has been going. And that kind of, when we talk about Easter was about a week before the crucifixion, right? All the celebrations that we celebrate. And the next time we meet together, it's going to be just about that time in the Jewish calendar. We celebrate it differently, obviously, than they did. But there's the Passover coming up, and it's a big celebration. And it's back in Jerusalem where all the action's happening. And Jesus rears his face. And this is the beginning of the end. So that's where we're at, guys. What do you think about Jesus? What do you think about what he said about himself? These are tough questions to swallow. You know, God is a loving God. He's not quite who we think he is. He loves beyond religious barriers and a lot of the things that we think are presuppositions that really aren't true. So, next week is showtime. So, get ready, and I'm looking forward to meeting you guys then. Have a great day.